Welcome to the Navseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, listeners, to the Navseam podcast. I believe this is episode 109.
That is correct.
That's right. My name is Dr. Jeff Winkle. I'm down here in the bunker with my good friend and co-host, Dr. David Noe. How you feeling today?
I'm doing pretty well, Jeff.
Yeah.
I am eager to discuss Book VIII of Vergil's Aeneid, but we'll just have to see how the conversation goes here.
Oh, are you worried about something?
Well, you know, sometimes there's not as much flow in the repartee.
Yeah. That's what you're concerned about.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to carry this one on your broad, muscly shoulders.
Oh, man. Well, thank you. I will do my best. All right. So, we're talking Book VIII today. We're talking the second half of Book VIII. Mm-hmm. And we're going to pick up some of the stuff we were talking about last time, this episode with Hercules and Cacus. And I think there's a lot more to unpack there.
Yes, I think so. Mm-hmm. And we don't have a shout out.
Again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there anybody listening, I guess is the question.
Well, you know, we were just talking before you hit that record button that the numbers on the podcast have been up. So people are listening.
Should we inflate them like undergraduate grades?
Oh, I see. I get. Yeah, maybe we should do that. Just
for the sake of the listener, should we tell them there's some enormous number?
Just completely lie about what they actually are.
Yeah.
No, I don't think we should do that. But
okay.
All I'm trying to say is that those bigger numbers, there's people out there, and most of them have not had shout outs.
That's correct.
So maybe they're just shy and reserved.
That's good. Yeah. There's too much I don't know, extroversion in this world.
I get irritated with extroversion.
I do too.
Right.
Let's celebrate those who are shy and reserved.
Exactly.
So this non-shout out is to all of you who didn't send in your name because you were too timid.
Yes.
Thank you for listening.
Nothing to be afraid of. We want to celebrate you.
That's correct.
Because, at the end of the day, it's all about you.
Is it all about them?
I think it's all about them. Yeah.
Okay.
So no shout out. Maybe next week we'll have one, but we'll see.
And you're feeling good, Jeff? You ready to do this? I didn't ask you.
Yeah, I started a new semester this week, and that always is energizing. If I'm away from the students for too long, I get a little twitchy.
Yeah,
and I irritate my wife and children.
Oh, so I can't imagine.
It's good to get me out of the house.
How about your friends? You irritate them?
Well, you tell me.
Yeah.
You find me mildly irritating?
No,
not
really.
at all. Okay.
So you're teaching this semester classical myth, I understand.
Yes, I have a world religions class.
World religions, and what's the third one?
It is America cinema genres.
America cinema genre.
Yes.
You're going to make them watch Apocalypse Now?
I did last semester, not this one. But yeah, we do. We watch war films, Western films, comedies, tragedies, old school silent. It's a lot of fun.
Bridge over the River Kwai?
I haven't done that one yet, but that's one of those that always makes like that top 10 of all time.
What's a war film that you have them watch? Saving Private Ryan?
That's what we're doing this semester. Okay. We've watched, I usually will show them a Vietnam film. We've done Platoon, Full Metal Jacket, Apocalypse Now, but we're going to do Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan.
Interesting.
So who I really feel bad for when I show that film is Who's Teaching Next Door. Because there's lots of explosions.
Oh, there's a lot of noise going on in that movie.
Right, so we don't have it'd be nice to have kind of an isolated theater, but I'm going to crank it up.
Here, you could ask me if I've watched that, if I've seen that movie.
Have you seen Saving Private Ryan?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
And I thought it was a great movie.
It is. It's
really gripping in places. Wow.
That opening of the landing at D-Day is
unbelievable.
Is unmatched. Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic stuff. All right, so should we dive into this?
I think
stuff?
we should, because we're talking war today. Here we are in Book VIII, right?
Mm-hmm.
The last third of the epic. To set the scene a little bit for the listener, in case they haven't listened to the previous 48 episodes on the Aeneid, Aeneas and his men are in the region of Latium now.
Yes.
They are at the site of ancient Rome. They are at Arcadia with Evander, who is the king of the Arcadians, and his son Pallas is going to figure prominently in the remainder of the epic.
That's right.
And Jeff, can you fill the listener in on what just happened? What was the exchange between Evander and our hero Aeneas?
Right. So Aeneas and his men make their way up the Tiber, and they're met by Pallas, and they're invited into this celebration that's already going on, and it's a celebration of Hercules. And Hercules is a local cult hero for the Arcadians. and it's Evander which shows him kind of the location of where this episode between Hercules and the monster Cacus took place, right? And so Cacus stole the cattle that Hercules had stolen from the creature Geryon,
right,
which is one of his famous 12 labors.
Yes.
And while he was sleeping, Cacus, I think in Virgil's version, he grabs 4 of them, right?
Yes.
And then drags them away.
Pulls them backward into the cave.
Yes.
Their hooves being reversed, right? And therefore, it's supposed to conceal their location.
Right. Would throw Herc off the trail.
That's right. He's not the brightest, I don't know, the brightest bulb in the constellation, something like
Hercules?
that. Yeah.
Yeah, the punch of his heroism lies elsewhere.
That's right.
In his fists. Yeah. And here especially. So Heracles wakes up, he's driving the cattle away, and then he hears one of the lost cattle lowing in the cave. And he basically tears off the roof of the cave.
That's right.
And grabs Cacus out and beats him to death.
Yep. He grabs what does he do? He twists off the top.
He does.
And throws away the stump.
He does. Exactly right. Yeah. And it's a violent. That's right. Okay, it was a Seinfeld reference there.
Yeah, thanks for catching it.
Yeah, the muffin tops.
Right. Another little digression here.
Yeah.
Little known fact, perhaps little known fact. The ancient church fathers, when they first began to be challenged and noticed by the intellectuals of Rome, and they were criticized, saying, your stories, that Hebrew Old Testament, is just a bunch of fairy tales and legends. They said, no, actually, our stories are the originals, and the Greco-Roman myths are ripoffs of what we've done. And in fact, the story of Hercules was inspired originally, they claimed, by Samson. Right.
Yeah.
And there are many, many similarities between the two characters.
There are. I think you do find, if you did kind of even a broader kind of comparative mythology, that the strong man hero is an archetype in the same way that the trickster is. Right?
That's right.
So I think, Gilgamesh to some degree kind of falls into the strong man archetype. But yeah, definitely Samson and Heracles or Hercules are birds of a feather.
Right. So when I asked our former colleague, Dr. Young Kim, who has been mentioned on the podcast a few times, I asked him, do you think there's any plausibility to that? Some historical link. And he said, well, it's interesting to me, and this is his area of specialty, that the apologists don't mention this, right? The Christian apologists don't mention this until they receive pressure from pagan contemporaries. So apparently before that, according to him, it hadn't really occurred to them to say the Greco-Roman myths are derivative of the scriptures. It just doesn't figure into the argument until later.
That's interesting. Just to kind of expand upon that a bit, I think a fascinating thing that happens with Hercules is that Christian attitudes toward Hercules, they thaw over time. Like he becomes not Christianized, but a figure who is sympathetic because of his sufferings, right?
Yes.
The famous kind of, he's given the folk tale of Hercules at the crossroads, right?
Right.
He's given this choice between a life of virtue or a life of vice.
Yes, the two women that appear to him.
Yes.
And he has to choose between them.
Right. And so he becomes kind of like a pilgrim's progress in every man.
Right.
And so in Heracles' sufferings and his temptations, I think some early Christians said this is a character that we can sympathize with.
Yeah, he's an archetype.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the development of the tradition generally. Early Hercules in the Iliad is pretty much just the brute. Later Hercules becomes not just brawn, but he becomes brain in some sense.
Right.
And so I think that kind of plowed the ground for appropriating him as a moral and ethical hero.
Exactly. But that's also sticky too, because for the Greeks, another part of Heracles' persona was his comic persona, right? And there was very few lusts that he didn't give into.
That's
right?
correct.
And so, from a Christian point of view, that makes a character very difficult to rehab.
Well, what to do, with the character of, is it Hylas, right?
Which yes, exactly.
When they're on the Argonaut, when they're on the Argo, I mean to say, and he has to go off in search of this young boy and so forth. Hercules, like you say, there were very few lusts that he did not indulge in.
Right. But from a literary point of view, he's a fascinating character. I don't think there's any other hero like him that has so many feet in different arenas. Right. He's comic. He's tragic. He's a straight up Saturday morning hero.
Right.
He's all of these facets in a way that I think not even like an Odysseus is.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
He's dispatched to rescue Prometheus when chained to the rock.
Right.
So you need to conjure up a hero. Hercules is the guy.
Yes, exactly right.
And that in part explains, to bring it full circle, why he's here in Aeneid Book 8.
Right.
It almost seems as though Virgil is looking for a slender, tenuous excuse to insert him into the epic.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to tell a Roman epic and outdo Homer, you have to mention each of the great characters at some point.
Right.
So here's a way to insert him into the story.
Exactly. And we were talking a bit last time about this is for many critics of the Aeneid, they puzzle over this aspect, right? So is it just kind of a token insertion into the story?
Right.
Because we were kind of going back and forth last time about, okay, what's the underlying message here?
Right.
Right. And so Heracles, a violent hero, uses violence to kill this monster. And you are from an ancient point of view, there's no problem with that, right?
With the killing of the monster,
right,
no.
Exactly.
And it's not immoral to kill a monster, was my main point.
Exactly. So I think more of the questions around is who does Hercules represent here?
Yeah.
And so, how does it speak to kind of the larger themes of the Aeneid? And I think the opening quote here, I think kind of gets at some of those issues.
Right.
So,
And this is from David Quint.
Yes. Who wrote this article about 7-8 years ago.
Okay.
And
wow, that's recent.
It's very
It's
recent.
just like yesterday in classical terms.
Right. So he begins with a quote from actually Book 5, not Book 8.
Okay.
And it centers around this figure of Eryx, Eryx, who was a king of Sicily. He was a son of Venus with her lover Abutes, one of the Argonauts, one of the lesser-known Argonauts. And so thus he's a stepbrother of Aeneas, right?
And we talked about this episode, right, of Eryx and Dares during the funeral games of Anchises.
Yeah, exactly.
This extended boxing match.
Yes. So the story, he goes on to be a boxer that challenges Hercules, and Hercules kills him.
Right.
So I think that to some degree kind of raises an issue. So we have this backstory of Hercules killing a son of Venus and at least half relative of Aeneas.
Right.
And so does that color the way we view Heracles in this scene in Book 8? He's already killed the son of the goddess, who's kind of who is the mother of our titular hero.
Right.
So what does that mean, if it means anything?
So these are the strands that Quint is attempting to draw out.
Right. So he has a quote here from Book 5, starting at line 412.
Yeah, let's hear that.
Yeah. So he says, "What if one were to have seen the glove and arms of Hercules himself in the fatal match on this very shore? Your brother Eryx once bore these arms. You can see them stained here with blood and spattered brains. With these he stood against mighty Hercules." So in some ways, this correlates to what Evander is doing in Book 8. He's saying, look, this is where this happened. You can see the landscape. You can see the place where Hercules slept. And
that's right.
And so it's a similar kind of travel log here. So I think we're both of the opinion that there's not much in the Aeneid that isn't deliberate, right?
Oh, right.
Right. So there's very little that's kind of accidentally or just kind of thrown in.
That's correct.
I mean, there are unfinished elements to the epic, but I think I'd be on safe ground saying that I think Virgil would want us to read Book 8 against this because it's such a similar kind of invitation.
Definitely.
Right.
And a proper appreciation for literature, I would say, and just general charity, requires that you think the author does everything deliberately until proven otherwise.
Absolutely. Yes. Well said. So Quint goes on. He says, "In the myth that lies behind this passage, Eryx, the son of Venus, and hence half-brother to Aeneas, either steals a runaway bull from the herd of Hercules or covets the cattle. He challenges or is challenged to a fight with Hercules and loses his life." So right there we have, he's doing what Cacus does.
Cacus does, right.
Perhaps his are among the brains and blood splattered on the gloves. In some versions, this contest is more of a wrestling than a boxing match, and hence a mythical repetition of Hercules' defeat of Aeneas.
We should mention what that is. So Aeneas is the Libyan monster, lives down in North Africa, and he is the one who, being he's a giant actually, a son of the earth. Mm-hmm. Whenever he touches the earth, he regains his strength. So Hercules now, using some brains, not mere brawn, has to hoist Aeneas over his head and squeeze the life out of him.
Oh, that's right.
Because if ever he touches the ground, he regains all of his strength and is more than a match for Hercules.
That's great. Exactly.
So it's a variation on like the heads of the Hydra.
Yes.
Hercules has to figure out, well, I cut one off and two grow back. What am I going to do?
That's right.
So he gets out his soldering iron and fixes it that way.
Yeah. And speaking of Samson, his strength tied to the length of his hair.
Yeah.
There's kind of a slight thematic
You mean
connection there as well.
to the notion of Aeneas?
Well, the idea of you cut off the Hydra's head and you cauterize them and
I see
more
what
grow
you're
back.
saying.
The longer Samson's hair gets, the stronger he gets.
I don't know if it's the stronger he gets. I don't want to quibble, but it is kind of my specialty.
Yes, quibble away, please.
If his hair is not long, he doesn't have the strength.
There you go.
But I don't think, if it's hanging down to his waist, he's twice as strong as, but anyway.
That's the way I like to tell it.
Okay,
right?
you
Exactly.
could tell it like you want.
All right. So Samson it's just like the big man bun on top.
All right.
All right. Yeah, no, all right. Quint, going on here. So Virgil appears, to recall this latter combat when Evander tells how the hero squeezes the life out of Cacus. So Evander's celebration of the deliverer Hercules at the Ara Maxima might be tempered for Aeneas by the sobering memory that the same Hercules had killed one of his brothers. So there's the kind of the complication. So if we're meant to identify, if Aeneas is meant to kind of identify with the triumph of Hercules as kind of a model for the Roman triumph to come, how do you explain kind of this idea that the same guy killed one of his relatives?
Right.
All right.
His half-brother.
Yes.
Same mother.
Cacus, again, this is Quint here. Cacus, however monstrous, is also Aeneas' stepbrother. Evander is himself largely modeled on Homer's Nestor, whose whole family, father, and 11 brothers were slain by Hercules. In one version of the story, Hercules killed them because they too stole the same cattle of Geryon.
What is it about these cattle of Geryon?
I don't know. They're magnificent.
They must be Black Angus or what's that Japanese beef?
The Kobe beef.
Yeah, it's Wagyu or something like that.
Yeah.
Each cow is delicately massaged every day by an appointed assistant.
How would you like that to be your job?
Thanks.
The cow massager?
Cow massager, no thanks. I've spent a lot of time around cattle.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But yeah, they must be something because everybody wants them.
Right.
Yeah. So in the Metamorphoses, Quint goes on, Ovid's Nestor, mourning his family, declines to praise Hercules in his account of the Battle of the Lapis and Centaurs. Roman readers of the Aeneid may have similarly looked upon Augustus, the Herculean savior of their country, as they remembered their own relatives who had perished on the other side during the civil wars.
Okay, so here it is then, right?
Here's where Quint loses you, right?
Yes. The final sentence here. Everyone is pushing as quickly as they can to introduce a revisionist idea into the interpretation of the Aeneid.
So you say this is bunk.
Well, it's just kind of surprising, right, that post-Enlightenment individuals all happen to find in the story of the Aeneid Virgil's obvious, they would say, criticism of the Augustan regime. Mm-hmm. I'm not defending the Augustan regime. Yeah. I'm no fan of totalitarianism, which is what Augustus seems to have instituted.
Sure.
But I just think it is highly implausible that this was Virgil's secret motive all along, and no one notices it until the late 20th century. For example, the first time I was introduced to Dante, I found out that Brutus and Cassius, as well as Satan, are in the lowest circle of hell.
Brutus and Cassius are down there with Satan? Oh my gosh.
And do you know why?
Why?
Because Dante believed that Julius Caesar inaugurated a golden age, that Roman imperialism was something good.
Yeah.
And brought peace and allowed for the spread of Christendom. And, Dante's, I'm being a little bit loose here with my description. I'm not a Dante scholar, but I think what I'm saying is generally true. And so those whom I would consider, heroes of self-government, Brutus and Cassius, are actually the villains in Dante's eyes.
Oh, that is so interesting.
Because they killed off the guy that, started something so wonderful, the Roman Empire.
Right, exactly.
How different than the way we typically think of it.
Definitely.
So, yeah, I'm sorry, Quint, you lost me there. Roman readers of the Aeneid, he says, may have similarly looked upon Augustus, the Herculean savior of their country, as they remembered their own relatives who had perished on the other side during the civil wars. The other problem with this interpretation, if you'll allow it,
please,
is that was Augustus so stupid that he could not see this as criticism when Virgil, wrote it, and then it was parts of it were read to him? Mm-hmm. Was Augustus so stupid, and only people in the late 20th century have figured it out? Because Augustus continued patronizing and supporting Virgil.
Right.
I mean, it's plausible there could be minor criticisms, and he would continue to support him as a poet.
Well, that's
if the thing as a whole, though, is meant to undercut his program. How could he be happy with that?
Right. Well, I've also heard the argument that why would Augustus go on and publish this thing? The explanation is, Augustus was an enlightened leader. And he was.
But I thought he was an autocrat who destroys everybody. Well, which is it?
This is another angle.
Yeah.
And that he was okay with the criticism because he wasn't so petty as that. And
this seems to beg the question.
I think there's a middle path. I think there's a middle path, right? So, one of the famous quotes from the Iliad that, such a great thing it was to found the Roman Empire. Like
from the Aeneid, you mean?
From the Iliad, right? It was a monumental task, and it was a difficult task, right? I think you could easily see that. Okay, you can take this idea, but you don't have to push it to this length that it's a criticism of Augustus, but recognizing that this great prize, the greatness of Augustus, came at a great cost of blood.
Yes.
And you can end it there.
Right.
You don't have to go on and say that, some of these relatives, they recognize that Augustus is successful, but they're upset about their dead relatives who fought on the other side. And it's kind of a mixed bag. Right. So
you're trying to strike the middle path
here.
Yes,
I'm with you, but I think this argument, Quinn's argument, kind of falls apart in this last sentence of this paragraph.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else do we learn from it then?
What do we learn from it? I think that one of the things I really like about Vergil is that I think he's a lot more complicated than I think he's often given credit for.
Okay.
And so I think that the idea that the kind of the messiness of Hercules' backstory, he killed Eryx. Aeneas is
who is not a monster, by the way.
Right.
So that one is not excusable in terms of the the idea that I've set up.
Right. And it says here, as Quint says here, Cacus, however monstrous, is also Aeneas' stepbrother. So I think that idea that the Heracles story is messy. He's involved in the killing of people that were related to Aeneas, that were the children of Venus.
Right.
I think that makes I think those make for very interesting questions. Like, so what does that mean? And it's not just kind of this cut and dried. Dudley Do-Right marching towards his destiny.
Okay.
I think that's interesting.
Right.
And so
that adds to your appreciation of Aeneas.
I do. It does. Or to Vergil. I still have mixed feelings about Aeneas as a hero.
Right.
He's a little mopey for my taste. But I think for Vergil's artistry, he's saying that the founding the Roman Empire and Augustus being who he was is not a cakewalk.
Right. Fair enough.
All right, Dave, before we dive into the next section, there was a corrigendum you wanted to get to from last week.
Yes, I think this is important. So last week when you were reading some Lombardo, there was a line about amazing to see or something along those lines. And I said, that's probably mirabile visu. That's probably the supine.
Yeah.
And I looked it up afterward, and no, it's not. It's mirabile dictu.
Okay.
So for those of you who are keeping score at home, specifically with respect to Latin, you have to mark me down a few points there.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, you took one for the...
I took one for the team.
For the team, yeah.
That's right.
Do you like a good supine?
I do like a good supine.
Yeah,
with some crackers into it, maybe.
It's the best, right?
Yeah.
So, and the supines they're usually dictu or visu.
That's correct. So there's two kinds of supines.
Yeah.
If we're going to digress a moment, it's a defective fourth declension noun that occurs in only two cases: the accusative and the ablative. The accusative is used with verbs of motion to express purposes. So I could say, for example, Romam, how should I say? Romam visum aides eo. I'm going to Rome to see the buildings.
Okay.
Right? That's the accusative with a verb of motion to express purpose. The supine is also used in the ablative for descriptive purposes like this, right?
Yes.
Mirabile visu, amazing to see. Mirabile dictu, amazing to say. It could be something like, miserabile auditu, pitiable to hear.
Yeah.
I think when people listen to the podcast, that's miserabile auditu.
Auditu,
That's
right.
what they hear. So those are the supines.
Have you ever come across like a wonderful to smell?
I haven't.
No?
But the verb to smell is olfactio.
Yeah.
So it would be, olfactu. Yeah,
Olfactu.
Wonderful in the smelling.
Yes, I like that.
No, I haven't come across it.
Right. Now, just another kind of sub section of this digression. You've seen Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yes, I have.
Right. And one of the places in the movie where I decided, okay, I really like this is early on, where you have the blind old guy in the handcart who's kind of our Tiresias, right?
That's right.
And he tells George Clooney in his palace, he says, you're going to see so many startlements, wonderful to tell.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, these guys did their homework.
Yeah, they know.
They put a supine in there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Wonderful in the saying.
In the saying.
Yeah.
Yep, that's great. So where are we going from here?
Well, we're going to carry on here with what happened after Evander ended his long tale about Hercules and what Aeneas experienced next.
Okay. So so the celebrations of Heracles go on. They sing a hymn of praise. Evander kind of takes Aeneas on a little bit of a kind of a history tour of the area.
A little bit of a walking tour.
Right. He mentions the golden age under Saturn, and I think this is all reflective of they're in Arcadia. Evander's kingdom is very rustic. They're very close to nature, and so they're kind of closer to that original, pure, perfect golden age.
Yes, they're unspoiled.
Right.
It's similar to the way that Anchises guides Aeneas through the underworld. Now Evander is guiding Aeneas through the world of the future, you might say.
Right.
These will be your domains. I'm going to hand the reign over to you in a sense. And this is where Rome will be situated.
Do you think that's the main point of this episode? Because in some ways, so in the underworld, Anchises gives Aeneas a view of the future, right?
Yes, because there's the Valley of Souls. Here are all of the Romans yet to be born. They're going to be sent down the pneumatic tube and deposited in their bodies and lead their famous lives.
Yes. And then also, as we've seen in previous books, Aeneas meets King Latinus, right? And it's his daughter that's going to be kind of the royal, the marriage into which he'll kind of become royalty.
Yes, Lavinia.
So, but then, so how does Evander fit into that? Do you think it's this, it's a kind of a geographical kind of tie?
I think it's partly that, but I would also suggest, as we discussed last week, it is a way for Vergil to humanize Aeneas and to bring him into the Italian landscape as more than just a conqueror. Here's a way to show that he belongs here, as in the way that the father of the Tiber, right, Pater Tiberinus, in the last episode, greeted him in that dream and said, "We've been waiting for you." Now, Aeneas is shown to be someone who really fits here. He belongs here. He doesn't have to roll roughshod over all of the indigenous peoples.
Right.
They want him there. He belongs.
Right. There's natural allies for him there. Exactly. Okay. Yeah. I like that. I like that explanation a lot. So Evander shows Aeneas around his land. He tells him a number of backstories. I think there's a bit of fan service for the Romans here. It's like, this is where this. So we get sites where future famous events are going to take place, right?
Correct.
And so I think it fits very well with Anchises, giving Aeneas kind of the vision of the future. So he kind of showed them the people. Now Evander's kind of showing, okay, this is the place,
right,
where these things have happened and will happen.
Right. But Aeneas is missing something, isn't he? In order to be the great conquering hero, he's missing good armor.
Good armor. Why wouldn't he bring this with him from Troy? And he doesn't have divine armor.
No, he does not.
He needs to transform into Achilles.
Correct.
Right.
He's got to have his little moment of montage.
Yes, exactly. So, before we get into that, though, would you read a little Latin here and say a few more things about kind of this tour that Evander gives from 342 on?
Sure, so picking it up at 342. Hinc lucin gentem quem Romulus acer asylum, retulit et gelida monstrat super drupa lupercal, par ratio dictum pa nos de mora lacaii, nec non et sacri monstrat nemus argileti. Testatur quelocet letum docet hospitis argi, hinc ad tarpe am se det Capitolia ducet, ardre nunc olim silvestribus hordrida dumis.
Very nice.
I like those last lines there.
That's
right?
Nice. Yeah.
The now golden, once shaggy with woodsy shrubs.
Yes, exactly. Good. And here's Lombardo's translation of those lines. It says, next he showed a vast grove, which Romulus later would make a refuge, showed him to the Lupercal, a cave beneath a cold cliffside with the Arcadian name of Lycian Pan. Then he showed him the wood of holy Argiletum, and calling the place to witness, recounted the death of Argus, his guest. And from here Evander led him to Tarpeia's home in the capital, golden now, but then bristling with thickets. And a little bit more here. Even then the religious power of this place awed the country folk. Even they shuddered at the woods and stones.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So this is a tour of the Capitolium, right? And the Tarpeian rock from which Tarpeia was thrown down.
Yes.
You can read all about this in the history of Livy, right? Pre-Republican Rome and archaic and legendary Rome.
Right. And a rock which became the site of executions for the Romans.
That's correct, because of that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love this too. A lot of this stuff is, again, kind of purely Roman, purely Italian. Right?
Yes, there's nothing Greek here.
There's a mention of Pan and Argus, but it's Romulus, it's Tarpeia, right? And it's all about kind of the locality. And I think it goes back to what you were saying, is that Aeneas belongs here. And he's being invited into almost kind of the secrets of the place.
Yes. Do you think Achilles ever felt at home around the walls of Troy?
I don't think he did.
No. He had his tent. Right, he had his canoe, whatever it was.
He was glamping, as we said many months ago.
Many months ago. Seems like eons ago.
Yes.
But he was not at home.
No.
And he was an invader. So Aeneas is meant to appear not as an invader, but someone who is engaged in a homecoming.
Right.
Is it persuasive?
Well, I think it remains to be seen.
Okay.
Right? I think one of my problems with, of course, Aeneas as a hero is that he always seems to keep everyone and everything at arm's length. The extreme example being with what happened with Dido.
So what would you like? You want him to cry more often?
I don't want him to cry, but I would maybe some fist bumps.
Okay.
And maybe taking part in the dancing and the singing, right? And just so the stuff isn't just happening around him; he's actually doing these things.
So it's his stoicism that you don't like?
I think that if indeed these passages are about Aeneas being invited in,
right?
I would like to see him more. Like one of the corollaries I saw with Homer, Evander with Aeneas, it reminds me a lot of Eumaeus and Odysseus.
Yes,
right?
this is book 13, 13, 14 in the Odyssey.
Yeah, and I love those scenes. And one of the things I love about it is that Eumaeus he's very simple, he's very rustic, very much like Evander. But Odysseus kind of is invited into his home. Yeah. And in Odysseus, he really seems to belong there. Odysseus loves Eumaeus.
Yes.
And so I would love to see just a little bit more warmth.
Okay, so here are, two counter arguments.
Okay.
The first is Eumaeus and Odysseus had a prior relationship.
Of course.
And Evander and Aeneas do not. Second is Odysseus lies all the time. Right? That is his trademark. You don't even know in that story whether he's telling the truth. And he tells the backstory that I'm not Odysseus, he says to Eumaeus, because he's still in disguise, but I met Odysseus on my travels. Aeneas never tells a lie, right? And if the hero by nature and constitution cannot be dishonest, then maybe it's going to be harder to appreciate him as a human being.
Well, that's well said. I find that.
Do you find that appealing?
I do find that. Maybe not appealing, but I find it persuasive.
Okay, so if Aeneas here had shaded the truth in some ways, you would find him a more appealing character.
I don't know. I don't think I need him to lie to do that. If he's being brought to a place where we meant to see him more at home, I would like to see him more comfortable. Aeneas always seems to be just an outsider in everything that he does. And so we'll keep an eye on this if this changes. I mean, it's early in his time in Italy, but he just seems so. And I don't see it as kind of his stoicism. I see it just kind of as his being an outsider.
Well, I think that these are the items that separate Odysseus from Aeneas. Odysseus cries a lot, and he lies a lot. Aeneas cries, but he doesn't lie.
Right. Okay. All right.
Which raises the question, why?
Let's keep an eye on it.
Cry, why, lie?
Right. That's it. I don't know. Well, let's somehow he'll get by.
Okay.
All right. And the other things I liked about this passage is that there's the mention. He says, the capital, it's golden now,
right?
But back then it was bristling with thickets, and so this idea that the architectural wonder of Rome under Augustus has these very kind of humble but golden age underpinnings.
Yes.
It's literally golden now,
That's correct.
But it was founded upon a place that was representative of the golden age.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So he's kind of drawing it's nature and civilization all together.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of bristling with thickets,
yes,
it's time for the ads.
Let's do it.
This episode of Ad Nauseam is brought to you by Racial Coffee. With headquarters in Portland, Oregon, Mark Helweg, this entrepreneur, has been bringing wonderful coffee to the masses for quite a while now. And let's face it, Jeff, friends don't let friends drink brackish tang. Am I right?
That is very, very true.
Okay.
Exactly right. So do you know a little bit about Mark? How did he, maybe just very quickly, how did he come to be the brewmaster?
Yeah, well, I've told this story before, but one thing about this podcast that we love is repetition.
Yes, we do.
And what's another thing that we love?
Well, we like repetition.
There you go.
Yeah.
So Mark was an undergraduate student of the liberal arts, first at an institution where I taught in Virginia, and then he graduated from Hillsdale College here in the state of Michigan. And he was selling coffee. He had the Clive Coffee Company, which is doing really well. And he noticed that the coffee machine, the home coffee maker, hadn't really improved in some time. And he thought, well, I can fix this.
Yeah.
So he studied the Italian espresso machines and the other kinds of, barista wonders. And he began with no engineering training.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah, the dint of genius and hard work to say, let me develop my own premium home coffee maker as an automatic pour over.
Fantastic. And the results of that are these two wonderful machines,
That's
the Ratio
right.
6 and the Ratio 8.
Yes.
Both of us, we each have the 8 on our counters at
That's
home.
right.
And they're beautiful machines. And every morning, the perfect cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was out of the home this morning having my coffee somewhere else, and it was a good cup. It was an excellent cup. It came out of one of those machines with a little, pouchy kind of sort of things.
I know them well.
Right, and it was okay. But then when I got home, I thought, that's not going to do it.
No.
I need some really good coffee. So I quick brewed up a batch in my ratio 8 with the oyster and the walnut accents, and it was fantastic.
Fantastic. Yeah, I've got the stainless steel model. It's great. So listener, do yourself a favor. Go to ratiocoffee.com. That's RATIO coffee.com. Check out these machines and their accessories. Our offer here, if you pick one or both of those machines, you put them in your little basket and you put in this code.
Yes. Can I say the code?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. The code is ANCO. That's Ad Nauseam Coffee. ANCO K5. And the K stands for kickback.
Kickback.
That's right.
Excellent.
Because if you buy a machine, it keeps this podcast going.
Yes, right.
So ANCO K5. And Jeff, what do they get?
They get 15% off their entire order.
You definitely want to check this out.
Yes. This episode of Ad Nauseam also brought to you by the good folks at Hackett Publishing. Hackett Publishing now for 51 years with their offices in Cambridge, Massachusetts and Indianapolis, Indiana, have been putting out wonderful editions and translations of books from the classical studies, but also many other corners of academia. I love their stuff. I'm using the Lombardo translation of the Odyssey in my myth class right now, and I have been for many years. And,
yes.
And for I don't see myself giving it up.
No. Why would you give up a wonderful idiomatic translation that comes in at an affordable price? It's a good value.
It is.
All you folks out there studying STEM with your chemistries and your mathemologies and your biologies, you people with your engineering degrees.
All these people.
Right, who are going to, make the world safe and convenient and and healthy and all those wonderful things that we love so much.
Yeah.
Your textbooks cost $200-$300 just for the first half.
It's ridiculous, right?
Why don't you study philosophy and literature and get your books from Hackett?
Exactly. And even there, my humanities students will complain about the cost of even like the paperback textbooks. It's criminal out there. But if you compare to what Hackett offers,
right,
that's where you got to go.
That's right. That's the sweet spot.
It is the sweet spot.
And it's about to get sweeter because...
Why?
Because if you go to hackettpublishing.com...
Oh, this part. Yes. Right.
That's the whole point of the ad, Jeff.
That's right. I forgot.
And you find the books that you want, and you drop them in your little grocery satchel, and you get to the checkout counter, right? And you scan your items, and they go beep over the little red eye. Then what happens?
Then you type in the coupon code.
Yes.
Which is AN2023.
That's correct.
For the new year.
What does that get them?
Oh, this is great. This is the best part.
Okay.
That gets you two wonderful things: 20% off your entire order and free shipping.
That is incredible. So what you're saying is that the listeners who want to expand their library and support this podcast should go to hackettpublishing.com and enter that coupon code.
That's exactly what they should do.
All right, check it out. All right, Jeff, so as we get back into this, where are we headed next?
Well, you had mentioned that one of the things that Aeneas lacks is proper armor.
That's correct.
And so he has to get some divinely made weaponry, particularly a shield.
Yes, he's got no red cape, no blue underwear, no green boots.
No, none of that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Right. And just like for Achilles, you got to go to the smith god. You got to go. So Hephaestus famously makes Achilles' shield, and I think it's Book 18 of the Iliad.
Yes, and who is it that prompts him to do that?
To prompts Achilles to get the shield.
No. Who is it that prompts Hephaestus to make this armor for her son? There, I've given it away.
That's right. It would be Thetis.
Yeah, it'd be silver-footed Thetis, right? The goddess of the sea, one of the Nereids. And she goes to him and speaks to him persuasively and says, my kid needs some armor.
Yeah.
Did your mom ever buy you any sports equipment or, fit you out in things you needed?
Yeah, it was all used, right? My mom wasn't going to need a Hephaestus.
We don't need to go down the road of bitterness here, Winkle, of childhood memories.
You opened the door a crack and I kicked it open.
Your mom is listening too, right? She's saying...
I think we're safe.
She's saying, it wasn't used. How about your new stuff? But this is a natural thing. You want your kid to be well-equipped if he's going out onto, the rugby field or the tennis court, or in this case... all of the plains and mountains of Italy, where he'll be killing lots of his enemies. It's
true. It's doesn't it strike you as a little bit of kind of helicopter parenting here? I mean, it's one thing of buying me cleats for my age 11 soccer team.
Okay.
Isn't Achilles and Aeneas maybe a little old to have mom taking care of this business?
I don't know.
Or that's presentism, isn't it? Am I?
Maybe. But these are divine ladies,
Yeah,
right? Here's the difference.
Okay.
If your mom could bring you cleats that had wings on them,
Ooh, that'd be cool.
Cleats that would turn you into the recently departed Pele,
Yes.
or one of those individuals, or Peel, as I heard someone pronounce it.
Nice.
I corrected that, of course.
Good.
Wouldn't you take her up on that offer?
Well, of course.
Okay.
Right. So I was just wondering. Achilles I thought might be a little bit too old for mom. Mom's constantly kind of.
He's a mama's boy.
He is totally a mama's boy.
But if Venus were your mother, right?
Right.
The goddess equipped with all of these abilities, who could refuse?
Right. Okay. All right. Fair enough.
All right.
So she goes to Vulcan.
Right.
For a similar kind of favor. Right. Now there are some issues here.
Okay.
That we don't find in the Iliad. Right. So I think because of the connection between Venus and Rome, and this is a very different kind of story that Virgil's telling.
Now Vulcan is her husband.
Yes.
Am I right?
Right, and it's not a match made in heaven.
No, it is the original Beauty and the Beast.
But without the happy ending.
Beauty and the Beast has a happy ending?
Yeah, did the Beast turns?
I thought the Beast ate the princess. I don't remember.
I'd watch that.
Is that the Disney version?
I don't think so.
Okay.
So no, it's a syrupy kind of weirdo romance, right?
Okay.
So, but we
so
know,
he's hideous.
Yes.
And good at things. Mm-hmm. She's lovely and good at nothing.
Who are we talking about now?
Venus.
Venus is good at lots of things.
Well, not really. She can make people fall in love with one another.
That's like the greatest power that you can have.
Yeah, but that's all she does. Okay. She's got no other powers. She can't make coffee or a burrito. That's all she's got.
Gotcha. All right.
And she drives a chariot pulled by doves.
Yes. Yeah, that seems very impractical.
Not even Tesla could do that. Pulled by doves?
Man,
some physics problems there. I would say.
Yeah, exactly. And you're not breaking like 10 miles an hour.
No,
right?
no,
right. So, but there's a very different dynamic here. So, Thetis, the mother of Achilles, she's not married to Hephaestus. She's not a lover of Hephaestus. It's a different vibe.
And I don't think she really uses feminine wiles.
No,
she just seems to get the armor out of Hephaestus as a favor, friendship.
Yeah,
we're not really told, are we? What the motivation is? Why Hephaestus should indulge this request?
He sympathizes with Achilles for some reason. I don't know, but yeah, I don't remember that being kind of a front loaded in that episode.
But here with Beauty and Beast, right?
Right.
Venus and Vulcan. Mm-hmm. What is the score?
Well, so part of the problem here is that again, if Virgil, as I think he does, wants us to be reminded of Homer in so many different ways. Who could not think of the episode of the Song of Demodocus amongst the Phaeacians, where he tells the story of the affair between Aphrodite and Ares, right?
Yes, where they were caught in flagrante delicto.
Yes, by Hephaestus with his magical net.
Yes, the husband who sneaks in and pulls the net over them, and then invites all the other gods in to mock their behavior of adultery.
Right, exactly.
Which is so interesting to me, if I may just say, because while all of the gods engage in adultery and philandering whenever they have the opportunity, when one of them is caught in it, it's a cause of derision.
Right. Well, they find it very funny. Hermes is making jokes, and you remember the only god that takes it seriously as a moral matter is Poseidon.
Yeah.
And he says he's going to make sure that restitution is paid.
Yeah. It's not clear why Poseidon's upset.
No. But it throws a wrinkle into that whole story too, because of course Poseidon is the god that is hounding Odysseus.
That's right.
Right. But it's weird here because we know, if you know your Homer, you know how that relationship turned out.
Yes, they were put together by someone, right? Vulcan and Venus.
Yeah.
It wasn't a natural attraction.
No.
But that's the incongruity that's supposed to make us wonder, right? The most hideous god is married to the most beautiful goddess.
Right.
It's incongruity.
But she winds up with Ares, which in terms on paper is a much better fit.
Yeah, but she winds up with a lot of people.
Well, that's true. But I mean, in terms of it's...
I get it.
Prom queen dates the football captain.
Right.
Ares is the dumb jock. It's a better fit. Mm-hmm. So Venus going to Vulcan.
Dumb jock, is this more historical bitterness on your part, Winkle?
There might be. You've pulled back inadvertently a number of layers here. Right. So we know how that marriage turns out. We just learned in the text that Vulcan is the father of Cacus, right? So does that add a wrinkle? Am I finding stuff that's not here, Dave? I mean,
I can't say.
Okay.
I can't say. I don't really, not because I don't really know. I just don't want to say. No, I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's not persuasive to me, Quint and others aside, that Cacus's distant relationship to Aeneas really has anything to do with the plot.
Yeah.
All of these individuals are related.
Right.
In some way.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I think it's much more believable that, as opposed to Thetis and Hephaestus, that Venus would use her feminine wiles to get Vulcan to do what she wants. And I think that's very straightforward. And so maybe all these other questions aren't even worth asking.
I don't know. But A, she's Venus, right? So she's the most beautiful person imaginable. And secondly, she has a relationship. She's married to Vulcan.
Right.
And I guess that never completely goes away despite all of the infidelity on her part.
Right, which is not mentioned here. I mean, maybe it's even foolish to try to put a chronology on this. Like all this stuff happens before she has an affair with Mars.
Yeah, we don't really know.
We don't know.
These chronological concerns, they're not important.
They're not important at all.
To Virgil.
Exactly.
So how does Vulcan respond?
All right, let me give Lombardo's translation here. It says, Vulcan hesitated, but when the goddess wrapped her snowy arms around him and fondled him in her soft embrace, he felt the familiar heat flash through his bones, like lightning splitting a thunderhead, a crackling flash in the rumbling sky. So he's
overcome.
Overcome.
Right.
Exactly. She's a power that you cannot resist.
It's like Gilligan with ginger.
It's exactly like Iliad with ginger.
How's that for a deep cut?
That's right. He just became kind of a stuttering mess in her presence, right?
That's Vulcan.
Venus felt it and smiled to herself. She knows. And Vulcan, chained by eternal love, why reach so far back for reasons? What happened to your faith in me, goddess? If you had been as anxious then, it would have been right for me to arm the Trojans. Neither the Father Almighty nor fate forbade that Troy stand, or Priam live 10 years more. Now, if your mind is set on war, all the care I can promise in my craft, all that can be done with iron or electrum, all that fire and air can avail, well, stop praying and just trust your powers.
Okay.
So
what do you think?
Your wish is my command.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So what do you think? Is this persuasive?
Persuasive in terms of what?
Is this a sufficient motivation for Vulcan to forget all the past infidelity and produce the armor just because Venus smiles at him and touches him on the shoulder?
Well, I think we're supposed to see he's completely under her power at that moment. It reminds me of, again, in the Iliad, remember when Hera borrows the belt of Aphrodite, and in that moment she becomes Aphrodite, and she seduces Zeus, and Zeus is completely helpless, right? And he sees her and he compares her to all these other women that he slept with, right?
Not good.
But I mean, such is the ridiculousness of that scene. I think we're supposed to see that's how far under the spell of Aphrodite that he is. So that's what I see here. It's like I'm
surprised though that you as an academic, full-blooded, aren't looking for other things that aren't there. Is it just this basic? It's like, a basic impulse?
I think I'm part of it is just I'm frustrated. All the stuff is like Heracles is related to who and his father of who, and Cacus is. Right. I'm so overwhelmed by that.
Right.
That I'm ready to accept just kind of I'm ready to apply Occam's razor here.
Okay.
The simplest answer is the best one.
All right.
Okay.
There we go. But then there's a reversal of the tale, as told in the Odyssey, right?
Venus dupes Vulcan with her wiles and sexuality. So we see them as, I don't know if I would call them a happy couple. Momentarily. But again, I have no idea. Does Virgil want us to think of that scene amongst the Phaeacians? Wants to think of that affair? I don't know. So
one of the really fascinating things about Greco-Roman mythology is that there's always a reset button. Right next door, right? Until the time of Plato, I keep saying this, but I think it's an important lesson. Until the time of Plato, nobody seemed to really expect consistency in the story of these gods and goddesses.
Exactly, yeah.
So this relationship was going great guns, and then, you turn the page and it's as though it's completely forgotten.
Right.
And now they're behaving in quite a different way.
Yeah.
Not different from their character, but different from their history.
Yes.
It's as though they lead a new life each day.
Yes.
You just press the reset button.
Right.
We don't really think of deity like that at all.
No. I see that in my myth class too, is that, the students, they want to know what's the real version, right?
Yeah.
And we have that. So yeah, like speaking of Plato, in his symposium, they're arguing, wait, we have two Aphrodites here. We got to figure this out.
Right.
Where before that, it's like, no, we don't.
Nobody seems to care.
Nobody cares. Right? It's so interesting.
It is.
It's so interesting. So yeah, maybe in that spirit, kind of asking these kinds of questions, we can just kind of let that kind of stuff slide. Yeah. All right.
So he makes the shield. And what's on the shield?
Well, there are several moments from Roman history on the shield, but Dave, why don't you get us into it with some Virgil followed by some Lombardo?
Yes. So it goes like this. Line 626. Illic res itelas Romano rumque triumphos, haudua tignar rusventuri quinscius aevi, fecerat ignipotens illic genus omne futurdrae, stirpes ab abscanio pugnata Quin ordina bella. Well, I got that one out with difficulty. Fecerat et viridi fetam vortis in antro, procubo vissa lupam gemenos huic ubera circum, ludera pendentis pueroset, lambda matrem. And the last one, impavidosia lamterati cervica reflexa.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Which sounds, thanks to Lombardo, goes something like this. On it, meaning the shield, the fire god had prophetically wrought the future of Italy and Roman triumphs in the coming ages, every generation in order, still to be born from the stock of Ascanius, and all the wars they would fight. On it he made the she-wolf lying in Mars' green cave, with the twin boys playing as they sucked fearlessly at their mother's breast, her sculpted head turned back to nuzzle each in turn and lick them into shape. Close by he put Rome, and the Sabine women carried off lawlessly from the seated crowds in the great circus games. And then sudden war between the sons of Romulus and aged Tatius with his stern cuirass. Next, peace between them, the same kings standing armed before Jupiter's altar, holding shallow bowls as they made their treaty over a sacrificed sow. The roof of Romulus's palace bristled with fresh thatch. Ooh, that's a tongue twister.
That is.
Fresh thatch.
Fresh thatch, yeah. That is tough to say, yes. So we got some interesting things going on here, right? So we got Romulus and Remus and the she-wolf. We have the capture of the Sabine women. We have kind of scenes of kind of war followed by treaty and peace.
Yes.
And then kind of going beyond what you translated
Right.
there. We have the death of Metius Fufetius. The siege of Rome by Porsenna is also shown.
Was an Etruscan.
Yes,
Right.
right.
And that may be historical. That's probably pure history there, Porsenna. The other things may or may not be legendary, depending on your perspective.
Yes. We have the Gauls attack on Rome.
Yes.
What's 4th century, I believe?
390.
390,
is
yep.
the date that sticks in my mind.
Yep.
Saved by the geese.
That's right.
The honking geese of Juno alerted those on the Capitolium
That's right.
to the arrival of the Gauls.
Yes. And then we have the Battle of Actium, which
So we skip ahead
a lot.
360 years to 31 BC.
And then the last image is in the center of the shield, the peaceful city with Augustus Caesar standing triumphant in the center.
Okay, so where is the revisionist secret Vergilian undercut, right? Is there something in the depiction of the shield that Augustus is really a creep and a villain?
I don't see it.
I'm being facetious.
Right, exactly right. There's nothing here.
Okay.
There's nothing here. I mean, aside from to get to Augustus, you got to plow through a lot of war and siege and blood. But I mean, such as would be the kind of what else would you expect?
Right.
So, if we compare this to Achilles' shield,
Yes.
Do you prefer one shield over the other?
Definitely Achilles' shield.
Yeah, without a doubt.
I think the themes in Achilles' shield are so much broader.
Yes.
And there's so much more humanity. I can't believe I'm saying this.
I can't believe it either. Right.
Because Virgil is, he's got that great sunt lacrimae re rumen. How does it go? It's in Book I. Here there are tears for things, and human suffering touches the mind.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't have the whole line, but he's such a human poet. And yet I find the shield of Achilles in the Iliad, Book 18, so much more human than anything Virgil does here.
Agreed. I'm half surprised that you said that, because I would have, as I was looking this over, I think Dave is going to like the straightforwardness of Achilles' shield.
Because I'm basically a narrow-minded, unimaginative person.
That's not what I'm saying at all. But I know that you don't have a lot of patience for kind of the endless rabbit trails of possible meanings of this or that, right?
Well, we've talked about this before, but I guess I believe there is an objective truth about these things, and while I don't always know what it is, I can't, let go of the desire to have it. That's the thing.
Gotcha.
I remembered the line.
Okay.
Sunt lacrimae ret mentem mortalia tungunt.
Okay.
Here there are tears for things, and mortal suffering touches the mind.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Right, and so you don't see any of that kind of humanity in the scenes on Aeneas' shield.
Not to the same extent as on the shield of Achilles in the Iliad.
Right.
So I think the inclusion of the capture or the rape of the Sabine women, and even the fact that it's described as lawless and terrible, that's humane. That show in the sense that it shows Virgil has uncertainty about the troubled past of the the Roman people. They've done some awful things.
Right.
But the setting on the shield of Achilles is just so much broader because it has these natural elements. It's got the ring of ocean banding the whole shield.
Right.
And there's something so compelling about the two different cities at the center of Achilles' shield, right? The city at peace and the city at war.
Right.
Plus the pastoral elements of the shepherding and the dancing and the agriculture.
Right.
It's just so human.
Right. I've always liked the reading of Achilles' shield. One of the things I like about Achilles' shield is that I think the pastoral and peaceful stuff is surprising.
Yes.
This doesn't seem very...
No, it's going on a war shield.
Right. It doesn't seem very, martial.
No,
right?
it's like putting a ribbon on a gun or something.
Right. And so I've always liked the readings that what Achilles there is really lifting up is the fate that the path that he didn't take.
Oh,
right? He's
all the things offered to him in Book 9.
Yes,
the bribes. You can go home and rule all these countries and grow to be an old man and see your grandchildren.
Exactly right, right. So that in that the other part of the Achilles' fate or his choice, however you want to read it, and so he chooses the short heroic life. And so the shield represents kind of everything that he has lost.
It just makes it so much more poignant.
Exactly. It's so tragic. It's so very human.
And he has to carry that into battle.
Right.
Literally.
I don't think it explains everything. I think there's elements in Achilles' shield that are still very puzzling, but that's one of the things I like about it because it can pull you in different directions. What I don't like about the shield of Aeneas is it's way too on the nose.
Okay.
Like Augustus in the center. I get it.
Okay.
But and then surrounded by these it is chronologically leading up to him. It just seems a little okay. Right?
Can you expand on that?
What
would have made the shield of Aeneas better and more like the shield of Achilles in your mind?
Something like if you're to compare it to Achilles' shield, you have a picture of a sheep farm, a dancing floor where young men and women are dancing and courting. Some kind of curveball on Aeneas' shield that would allow it for a little bit more nuance.
The death of Cicero, maybe?
Well, I think
put that on the shield.
Well, no, I think what I don't like is it comes back to kind of my problem with Aeneas. None of these things tell us anything personally about Aeneas. A lot of the stuff on Achilles' shield, if we connect it to kind of his fate or what he's lost, is deeply personal to him. And I don't see any of that.
So for Aeneas, he's just a cipher for Roman destiny.
He's an action figure with items sold separately. So
and you don't care for it.
I don't care for that. This is not a critique of the epic as a whole. I love the epic, and I love a lot of the places where there is this kind of nuance. I just don't think this is one of them.
The audience is going to hear critique. You know that. Mm-hmm. That's all they're going to hear from you.
That's fine.
They're going to hear Winkle doesn't like the Aeneid because Aeneas is simply the carrier of Roman destiny. He's an action figure. What is it? Accessories sold separately?
Yes. Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, all I got to say is come at me.
Okay.
Step.
Well, all right. But I like these elements of detail on the shield of Achilles, which Aeneas' shield seems to lack. A field being plowed for the third time. So there are notions of the futility of human life.
Yeah.
As well as the wedding that is portrayed on Achilles' shield. Mm-hmm. And
something that he will never have.
Right. Now these are incredible touches.
And they are both ekphrasis, right? They both kind of come alive in their description.
Yeah, can you define that term a little bit?
In ekphrasis, so the word itself just means a speaking out.
Yeah.
But it often refers to the description of a work of art. And then in the description, it kind of leaves the bounds of the inanimate and into the animate.
Very well said.
Yeah.
I'd like to point out a couple of other of these we've talked about before on the podcast, and that is the doors on the Palace of the Sun in Ovid's Metamorphoses.
Oh, yeah.
Those are highly decorated and ornamented with mythological themes. Also in Ovid's Metamorphoses, the tapestry that Arachne weaves when she's in competition with Athena is an ekphrasis, and it has all of the crimes of the gods. Mm-hmm. And of course, we've been to Florence and the golden doors, right, that Ghiberti sculpted on the baptistry. Right. That is a direct descendant of these different ideas.
Without a doubt, right. So if you were to compare them as ekphrases, again, Homer has it all over Virgil.
And not just because he's first.
No.
Because as a work of art, I would say it is innately superior. Poor Virgil.
Virgil. I think he dropped the ball a little bit here. That's fine.
Okay.
Right. We could always use the excuse, well, this would have been one of those things he would have polished up had he lived.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
You know, one thing that to try to contemporize this, back when you and I were just young lads, so many years ago, when you bought first vinyl albums, and then you bought cassette tapes, and then you bought CDs, right? The album liners and the CD covers, there was a lot of thought put into how those looked.
Yes.
And they could be highly evocative. I remember enjoying that in some ways almost as much as the music.
Yes.
The images and the pictures. And what was the artist trying to say about the musical content, by this cover?
Right.
Now, everything being digital, it's so much more convenient. I can listen to anything I want from any era.
Right.
But I really can't tell you what the cover of these things look like.
Right. That's completely lost.
Right. And
lost art.
There's no connection between the sound and the image.
Right.
And I'm trying to connect that to this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The image of the shield is like an album cover. And it's telling you this is the music the hero's playing.
Right.
Is that a stretch?
No, I don't think it's a stretch at all. So if I were looking at it through this, the Aeneas Shield is not an album that I'd want to pick up and throw on the turntable.
You would pass that right by at the record store?
I might listen to track 1 or 2, but
right.
I don't know how deep I'd get into it.
Yes, but the Shield of Achilles, right?
Oh, it's like Dark Side of the Moon.
It just jumps. That's Pink Floyd, right?
It is, yeah.
And is there a moon on the cover? I can't remember.
No, there's a prism with the light going through it and turning a rainbow. It's one of the most famous album covers.
Well, that's how little I know. You'd grab that right off the shelf, you know, when you stack the records, you got to page through them like giant index cards or something.
Exactly.
But
so to pursue the Pink Floyd thing, right? So the album is called Dark Side of the Moon, right? You might expect, there'd be some sort of lunar imagery on it, but there's not, and that's what makes it even more intriguing.
It's incongruous, isn't there? A 15-minute song on that album?
I think there is. Yeah, it's been a while since I put it on. But like the Shield of Achilles, right? Oh, pick this up. I'm going to expect war and death and peace and violence. No, you get so much more.
Yeah.
You pick up Aeneas' shield. Oh, it's about what you'd expect.
It's a history lesson.
It is.
It's an embossed history lesson.
Right.
And not appealing to you for that reason.
No.
I wonder if there are any artistic representations. There must be, right? Renaissance paintings and so forth, attempts to show the Shield of Achilles.
I was clicking around on Google Images yesterday. There are some, and I couldn't tell you if they were like Renaissance paintings or just things that people more recently have tried to kind of put it together.
Anything that you liked?
Not really, but the Shield of Aeneas is a lot easier to depict and kind of organize than Achilles' shield.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So, I mean, that's part of the ekphrasis. I mean, the Achilles' shield is a living thing, right? Which can't really be grounded in static media. Yeah.
Interesting.
Hey, Dave, I believe we're up against it.
Yeah, we are out of time.
I
think the International Shield Workers Union is coming in to start their crafting here in the vomitorium.
Yes. Right. I don't know if they're necessarily happy with us.
Well, are any union workers happy?
That's true. They're grumpy.
Uh-oh.
Here we go.
I veered political. No, I'm sure they're very, very happy. So they're going to come in, they're going to carve out their wooden forms.
Yes.
They're going to take their bronze and their copper and their gold and silver and pound it over these wooden forms with their little ductile hammers and so forth.
They got their anvils.
Yes, and their bellows, and they're going to huff and puff and polish and make some shields.
Exactly.
Right.
So it gets hot and sweaty. I want to get out of here.
I want to get out of here for sure. But before we get out of here, what do we need to do?
Well, you want to say a couple things about the Moss method?
I do. Yep. Right. Just a couple things. Number 1, if you want to study Greek. And number 2, this is how you should do it.
Okay.
And number 3, go to mossmethod.com, check out the program. Got some new recruits this week. I guess number 4, you can participate in weekly Moffus hours on Friday morning. We get together and we read Greek. You can even read the passage from Iliad 18 about the Shield of Achilles if you'd like.
That's in there? Awesome.
I cover anything.
Excellent.
It's a no-holds-barred Greek time.
Fantastic. Right. And how about LLPSI?
Yes, if you want to go from little knowledge of Latin to a lot.
Yes.
I take you what I call ab initio, from the ground up. And we start right out with the Lingua Latina per se illustrata, Hans Orberg's Latin textbook. And so this is a class I put together. It is more than 30 different video lessons, each 30 minutes to an hour in length. I've got 4 fine students in the studio, and they're going through the textbook, and I'm teaching them Latin so you can learn from their successes, learn from their mistakes. They're charming people who laugh and smile and make fun of me a little bit.
Oh, that sounds great.
And still pass the class. And I think it is a phenomenal value, honestly. There may be better Latin programs out there, I can't say, but I'm very confident there's not a better program out there at this price.
Fantastic. And they can find this where?
latinperdiem.com/LLPSI.
Fantastic. As always, we got some other people to thank.
Yes.
Mishka, our great engineer who puts this all together.
At breakneck speed. May I say?
The turnaround is always impressive.
It's impressive.
We got Scott Van Zen and Ken Tamplin to thank for the wonderful music that you hear throughout the episode.
There's a couple guys that know a lot about album covers.
That's very, very true. And Scott can play and Ken can sing. Ken can play too.
Yeah, he can. He really, really can. Some of his flamenco stuff is phenomenal. You'd really like it.
I didn't even know he
I'll
played
send
that
you
style.
a couple tracks. Yeah,
Fantastic.
Spanish guitar.
Right. What else, Dave? What else we got?
Well, we need to, in addition to thanking people, we need to tell the audience that if you would like to leave a review or to subscribe, go to adnauseum.com. We would like to get some more reviews on the Apple iTunes podcast site.
Yeah.
Say something nice, say something not so nice. It's up to you.
Yeah.
If you'd like to pick up a T-shirt that's Ad Nauseam themed, we have these wonderful T-shirts that show Hercules lifting up the world or wrestling with a lion with a nice tag from the Renaissance scholar Erasmus. What is that, Jeff?
Quae nocent docent.
Which means?
Which means that which, well, very loosely, that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
That's correct.
Right? Or that which harms teaches.
That's right. You could get yourself one of those. If you'd like to contact us for some viewer mail, write to jeff@adnauseum.com. Don't forget the V.
Or to dave@adnauseum.com. Also, again, do not forget that V.
And Jeff, what's on tap for next week?
What, are we diving into Book 9? Or are we going to...
We're going to go into Book 9.
Okay, we are.
So here's the plan as I envision it,
Okay.
at least. You can, of course, veto it. We'll do one episode on Book 9, and then we're going to veer off into something a little bit different.
That sounds great to me, too. All right.
And Jeff, I believe that you have today's gustatory parting shot.
I do. This comes from one Terry Pratchett from a book called Moving Pictures.
Yes, and I like this because there's kind of an academic, collegiate
Yes.
theme here where the chair and the dean are exchanging, can we call them niceties?
I guess so.
It's really kind of disgusting.
It's kind of gross, right?
All right, I'm glad that you're reading it.
It goes like this. Have a chocolate-covered raisin, he said. They look like rat droppings, said the chair. The dean peered at them in the gloom. So that's it, he said. The bag fell on the floor a minute ago, and I thought there seemed rather a lot. Oh, gross.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.